Brief introduction. Michael Quirk is Scout Executive and Chief Executive Officer of Seattle Council of Boy Scouts of America, headquartered in Seattle, Washington. The council serves over 18,000 youth with a volunteer cadre, is that how you say that?
That's what I would use.
Of 12,000 adult volunteers in Clallam, Jefferson, King, Kitsap, and North Mason counties. Chief Seattle Council is now in its 101st year. Mike is responsible to a volunteer board of directors in charge of delivering a prominent values-based program for children ages 6 to 21. His professional scouting background spans 33 years, serving councils in California, Oregon, and Washington. Mike returned to Seattle in December 2014 to serve as Scout Executive and Chief Executive Officer. Mike grew up in the Southern California where he enjoyed scouts, sports, and church activities. He graduated from California State University, Fulton, in 1984 with a bachelor's degree in business administration. Mike and his wife, Melinda, have 3 children and 2 grandchildren and reside in Snoqualmie, where they enjoy golf and family activities. And Rod's going to get you a little.
Hey, Mike and Ron have already, they're
there.
trying to sign up.
Yeah, I've got a lot of Rod stories, but we probably all do. Good morning. It's really a joy to be here. You know, in all my years of speaking with groups and representing the Boy Scouts of America, I've never had a shorter commute in my life than coming here this morning, so that's a real joy. This is really a great time for me to speak because this is March 1st, and it really launches what will be the next 4 months of super activity as we prepare in our organization to host thousands of kids who will be participating in our programs at all of our camps, particularly Camp Parsons, which you may have heard of. It's a prominent camp serving the Boy Scouts for 100 years. In fact, this summer will be its 100th anniversary. And we have something like 4,500 kids coming over a 10-week period. So it's, in our world, we're kind of oversubscribed. If you're in an industry that may have done that yourselves, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we are going to accommodate everybody. So it's a great time for us. And just on the horizon also is the 24th anniversary of the 24th World Scout Jamboree that the United States of America is hosting. We're hosting it at one of our properties in West Virginia. And we anticipate about 50,000 scouts and leaders over a 10-day period. So we're proud to be able to host it in concert with Scouts of Canada and Scouts of Mexico. And it really is a big deal for us. All right, now I got all that out of the way. I know there's some of you who are scouts. Who are the scouts here? All right, very good, very good. Any Eagle Scouts? All right. Any scout leaders? Yeah? Why did you volunteer? And where?
Woodinville, a long time ago. Keep the kid out of trouble.
Very good. Who else volunteered? Yes?
I was assistant scout troop leader for a while, scoutmaster, and was troop 167, which is out of the University Presbyterian Church. It was when I was a high school and junior high kid, we were a troop of about 160 kids, and we had 2 famous scout leaders, Mr. Rader, who was 6'8" and wore logging boots every day of the week. That was me. And if you did not get up on time, he would just grab the bottom of your bag, pull you out of the tent, and then slide the bag off of you. You landed on the dew, and it was on. And then Mr. Toby and his wife, Miss Toby, always made baked goods for every single meeting, every single hike, and went on every single hike.
Wow.
And he was a scoutmaster there for I think 50 years. And then my father, after my brother and I were in our 30s, my mom mentioned to us we were making some slight comment because he needed help with the 50-miler, and we looked at him like, "Are you still involved with the troop?" So he stuck with this troop for 20 years after my brother and I became Eagles.
Marvelous.
Because there weren't volunteers. So once I hit my early 40s, my dad was like, "Tap, it's your turn. You need to get in there and help out." So I did that for a few years till I moved. And
That's
it was a
great.
great experience.
Any of the ladies here have children or grandchildren in Scouts? Well, let's see from the Scouts, the former Scouts, who remembers the Scout Oath? Who wants to come on up?
Oh boy.
Come on
You
up.
can do it.
What's
See
your
if I
name?
got my oath or my law.
Yeah, right.
John.
What's your name?
John.
John. Okay, John. How would you approach this?
On my honor, I'll do my best, do my duty to God and my country, and then I've kind of lost the rest.
Be a scout law.
Be a scout law at all times, keep myself physically fit, morally straight, something like that.
Yeah.
Clean and reverent, something in there.
Okay, that's mostly good. And you know, a lot of guys get that. First of all, that's pretty brave. And that's part of the scout. That's one of the points of scout law. It's 40 short words. On my honor, I'll do my best, do my duty to God and my country, and help other people at all times. Keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. And that's a 40-word code that we want all of the scouts to understand, but more importantly, to live by. And it's been with us for now 100 some odd years. There's also something called the Scout Law. Who wants to take a stab at that?
Oh, well,
Come on up.
I'll embarrass myself.
All right. I have a feeling you got it.
Scout law, all right. There's 12 words that would call, is that right?
Yep.
So that is trustworthy, honest, helpful, brave, friendly, courteous, kind, cheerful. Maybe brave, clean, and reverent. Brave, clean, and reverent.
Brave, clean, and reverent. Very good. All right. Another brave guy. Now, what is your name?
Charlie.
Charlie. Well, you know, it's not getting it in a certain order that matters. If we were to get it in a certain order, it goes something like this. The scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. So, very good. I congratulate you. In fact, I actually want to reward you. So, John and Charlie, what I have for each of you is a Boy Scout handbook. And this is interesting, Scout handbook. It looks a lot different than when I was a scout, but it has a lot of the same kind of information in it. And when you peel back the cover of it, just let me give you an idea of what the contents are. There's a whole chapter on citizenship, one on fitness, one on first aid, one on aquatics, nature, outdoor ethics, hiking, camping, cooking, navigation, tools, personal safety and awareness, and youth adventure. So, John and Charlie, I got a book for you. This is now, we've sold something like 45 million Scout handbooks over the last 100 years.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Congratulations on that well-timed exercise. Now we're going to do a little rewrite on the Scout handbook. It's actually under production right now, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. Well, I always think it's a little bit ironic that I would grow up to lead the Boy Scouts of America because, in fact, I didn't want to be a scout. When I was 7 years old, I was determined to be a professional football player. I grew up in Los Angeles and watched the LA Rams. There was Roman Gabriel, Rosie Greer, Deacon Jones, the fearsome foursome. Anybody remember that group? And I was determined to be a football player. I knew I had to gain a little weight. That came over time. But my big brother Jim, probably the best gift he's ever given me, he's 3 years older than me, is when I declared at 7 years old I didn't want to be a scout. He literally took me by the collar and marched me down the street and around the corner to Mrs. Everoni's house. Mrs. Everoni was our den leader. Back in my day, we called it den mother. She wore the long blue dress, and I went kicking and screaming, as the phrase goes. My brother deposited me on the front stoop, and I thought, this is going to be so lame. And we did some crafts, we did some games, and then towards the end of the meeting, Mrs. Everoni brought out this half sheet cake, and ice cream, and cookies, and punch. And right then and there, I was hooked on scouting, and I've been coming back ever since. And I always tell everybody that when we run out of food, I'm out of here. So I'm glad to see some food here today. Let me just tell you a little bit about programs of the Boy Scouts of America. A lot of things haven't changed, and a lot of things have changed. Cub Scouts are the little blue guys. Now they're little blue girls. We have girls in Cub Scouting now as of about 3 or 4 weeks ago. They're the ones that you see probably trying to sell you popcorn from time to time. They're really cute, have a lot of energy. And that's called our Cub Scouts. And they're for children ages 7 to about 10 and a half, we leave those. Then we have Boy Scouts. They wear khaki. They're boys from age 10 and a half, 11 through about 18 when they age out. Then we have our co-ed programs, which are venturing, which those are for boys and girls age 14 to 21. They tend to be focused around areas around religious faiths, high adventure, outdoors, or anything like robotics. And then we have exploring, which are also co-ed, ages 14 to 21. And explorers tend to be grouped around career aspirations, like law enforcement, medical science, things like that. So those are the 4 programs of the Boy Scouts of America. Now, what we try to accomplish, and everything we try to accomplish, we call the aims of scouting. So we're only trying to accomplish 3 things. That's to develop citizenship in young people, so they understand what their rights are, the rights of others, develop their character, so they understand with these rights comes a certain responsibility and how to act, how to behave, and then personal fitness, and also maybe spiritual fitness. Those are the 3 things that we try to accomplish in kids. And wouldn't you agree that kids join programs like that to have their character developed? I don't think so. I don't think there's one boy that's ever joined our program that said, gee, Mom, I've been thinking about this. I think I really need to work on my character. They really don't. They join because of the adventure that we offer. And that's what we want. That's how we want to hook them. Just for example, think about if you're an 11-year-old and you're hiking up here at Mount Si. You're hiking along the trail and you come across a fork in the trail. There's 2 signs. And one sign says Vista, 100 feet. And the other sign says Adventure. And that's all it says, Adventure. Now, I'm 57 years old. I like vistas. So for a guy like me, that 100-foot path to the vista, which probably has a picnic table, and I like vistas and I like picnic tables, that may sound pretty attractive. But to an 11-year-old, it's not that picnic table, it's not that vista, it's the adventure that awaits. And they know, even at a young age, I knew as a scout, and many of you who were scouts probably knew the same thing, it really wasn't the destination that we were aiming at. It was the adventure and the journey, being with our patrol and our troop friends. So that's the kind of stuff that we do to hook kids on scouting. The outcome for us, what we want to accomplish through all this, is development of young people so they go on and live the best kind of life that they possibly can. And it reminded of a story. My wife and I, we like going down to Pike Street Market on a Saturday. It's got to be a nice Saturday though, not a rainy Saturday, which narrows it down to about 2 weeks a year. And you can see anything you want to see in Seattle if you sit at a coffee stand and watch. And I was with my wife here, and we saw a young man, and he kind of had a little moxie to him, and he was wearing a t-shirt. Now he had some tats. He was probably about 13 years old. He had some tattoos, he had some piercings, but he had a little bit of a swagger in his step. Maybe you know the kind of guy I'm thinking of. And he was wearing this t-shirt, and on the back of it said, "I follow no one." And at first I said, oh, right on, there's the kid. He's got his life philosophy all figured out. He's so proud of it, he's got it on the back of his t-shirt. I follow no one. Then I got to thinking about that, and I got to think about what I have done for my professional life. And then I started having a little pity for the young man, because he hasn't learned anything about anything. But he hasn't learned what great leaders have learned, and that is to be a big, effective leader, you have to be an effective follower. And so for those of you who have been in scouting, you've been on many a troop campouts, you know that sometime when you're talking with kids, you just don't know if you're getting through them. Like how to put a tent up, how to sharpen a knife safely, how to cook, how to clean up. And you don't often know if you're making it into their noodle until you walk away and you see them teaching some other younger scout. Then you realize, they really were paying attention. They've got this figured out. So that's the kind of thing that we're trying to accomplish in scouting, is to develop a sense of leadership so they go on and live a great, fulfilled life. But let me tell you just a little bit about the history of the Boy Scouts. It all started with a fellow by the name of William Boyce. who was a Chicago businessman. He was a publisher, and he was in London on a business trip. This is probably 1908. And he was lost in the fog. And he did the unthinkable. He asked for directions. And he asked a young man for directions to where he was supposed to go. And that young man was actually a scout in England. And when William Boyce tried to give the kid a tip, the scout simply said, "No, I can't take that. I'm a scout." This was 1908. And scouting had already just started in England. And William Boyce was so amazed at that. It was such an impact on him that he decided he needed to come back to the U.S. and start a program. And back in the early 1900s, there really wasn't any there were some organizations for boys, but they never really got their wings. And he came back and worked with a small group, including Paul Harris, and they organized the Boy Scouts of America. And since then, we have an alumnus now, about 110 million people who have gone through scouting over 100 years. And even right now, when you look at our alumni, we probably have the largest living alumni out of any youth, or quite honestly, any organization in America. And my job is to try to tap into them as best I can. A lot of people, when they think of the Boy Scouts of America, they think of that scout helping the old lady across the street. You've heard of that? I've never seen it. I've been looking, I've never seen it happen, but it represents the good deeds that scouts do and have been known for. And I hear people, refer to certain people as always, even guys my age, always just an old Boy Scout. And I used to take offense to that, and now I'm very proud of that because it represents so many good things in our world. But the Boy Scouts of America have been called on by our national leaders time and time again to help solve issues in our country. For example, in 1912, Scouts were called upon by our national leaders to help execute what was called the Safe and Sane 4th of July. Back in the early days, there really wasn't any regulation on fireworks. And as you can imagine, even with the regulations that we have today, and people, not just kids, are injuring themselves on the 4th of July fireworks, it was a huge problem. So Scouts were called upon to start an educational process to help people understand the dangers of fireworks. In 1918, Scouts sold more than $352 million in Liberty War bonds. And Scouts collected 10 railroad cars full of nut holes and peach pits. Now, why would they have collected peach pits? Anybody know? What was going on back then, 1918? There was a campaign called Do Your Bit, Save the Pit. Peach pits were collected by Scouts and others, and on a slow burn would create carbon that would be used in gas masks, because the Germans were beginning to use gas as part of their warfare. So there wasn't any supply, because quite honestly, America didn't know that they would have this kind of weaponry, so we weren't prepared. So they called on Scouts and others to begin this process of collecting peach pits and nut holes so they can burn these things down and create the carbon for the mask. Scouts were also asked to inventory black walnut stands. Black walnut. What would we have used black walnut for? What's that? Furniture? Okay. There was a war going on, and black walnut was used for rifle butts, and they were also used for propellers for airplanes. And believe it or not, why would you go out and inventory something you didn't think you would need? So we had vast acres and acres of walnuts throughout the country, which we needed the wood, but we didn't know where it was. So again, that was a big thing that the Boy Scouts did. Scouts have been involved with collecting rubber and scrap metal during the war efforts, helping out with Hurricane Katrina. Remember that back in 2005, just devastated a region of our nation. It was the Boy Scouts of America, because they're organized, that the president came to the Boy Scouts and said, look, you're organized, you know how to get things done. Lead the effort, would you, to help collect things that families are going to need, blankets, food, clothing, all the necessities that just were wiped out. And then in 2014, Scouts were called upon again to help with our national forests because with budgeting in our Forest Service, we have a lot of deferred projects in the federal government in terms of forest management. So the Scouts were called upon to help provide some help and contribute about $5 or $6 million worth of value to our own Forest Service. That's going out and building trails, rehabbing certain areas, taking areas that used to be wetlands and making sure that people didn't invade those. So that's what the BSA has been doing in terms of service locally. If you might have participated in the Scouting for Food Drive, we've been doing this for so many years. It's really not a very sexy project anymore, but it's as necessary today as ever before. We collect about 30 to 60 tons of food. This is kids collecting food for other kids. And it's very profound, but we've been doing it so long, it never really makes the news anymore. But I can tell you that the families in Snoqualmie Valley and other areas are just as neat today as they have been. So we're very proud of the fact that we're able to do that. Locally, our council, somebody mentioned in my bio, we serve 18,000 youth with about 10,000 volunteers. And these are the volunteers that we know of. They're the ones that have actually filled out a form and registered. We all know there's lots of moms and dads who participate all the time and normally fill out the form. So collectively, we're a very big agency spread out over 5 counties, all the way from here, well, you think of all the way into Olympic Peninsula. You know where Forks is? We're beyond Forks. So it's a big footprint. And I'm really happy the Forks Rotary Club hasn't invited me to speak yet. Locally, we're about 450 scouting families right here in the Snoqualmie Valley and the surrounding communities. Chaplain Honer is our district executive. Chaplain, you wave so we know. It's easy to figure out. He's the other guy in a sports coat here today. Chaplain does a great job serving scouting. He works directly with service clubs, churches, our volunteers, our individual units. He's doing a great job. And Rob is also here. Rob Wotton is here as our district, what we call a district chair, is one of our key volunteers, and serves, again, this general area here. We have 450 families, about 16 different scouting programs right in this area, and Rob is the one that's kind of giving them some support and help. And Rob, thank you for your help and all that. There is a connection between Rotary and the Boy Scouts of America. You know, Rotary started in 1905. Boy Scouts of America started in 1910. Both of them started by Chicagoans, Chicago business leaders, both attorneys. Paul Harris, as you know, started. You know why he started? I mean, he started the Rotary because there wasn't necessarily a lack of business professional groups. There was a lack of ethics involved with professional groups, and he wanted to bring to his area a group of business professionals that were had certain values, certain scout-like values. We call it the 4-way test here in Rotary. But Paul Harris and James E. West, who was our Chief Scout Executive, worked together for decades, going around, the two of them, going around the car, Chicago and other areas, trying to organize Boy Scout councils. And now the Boy Scouts of America have 350 councils across America. I don't know how many Rotary clubs there are across the U.S., but I know in scouting we have, I wrote down here, we have 1,300, across the U.S., Rotary clubs chartered 1,300 scouting units, which represents 41,000 youth. So you can see there has been, and hopefully always will be, a really deep connection between Rotary and the Boy Scouts of America. I'm about out of time here. I'll just tell you, maybe my last closing story is about the value of participating as a parent. I had a great experience as a scout. Many of you did too. Sounds like some of you had a great experience as an adult leader. What I wasn't ready for when I became a scout leader, because my father wasn't involved with me when I was a scout, was the number of activities and the quality of time that I get to spend with my own son, who was an Eagle Scout. There was a day that I was working in Oregon, and it was 2 degrees out. on a Friday morning, excuse me. 2 degrees. We had a camp out scheduled that weekend. And I thought surely, I grew up in Southern California, 2-degree weather. I thought surely we'd cancel the camp out. I went out to the garage early in the morning, gathered some stuff in my truck, and went off to work. All morning long, I thought the scoutmaster's gonna call. He's gonna cancel this camp out. The thermometer went down to 0 degrees. I thought surely we're gonna cancel. No, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he expected us to be at the church parking lot, ready to go, and we did. We got out to the camp out, about 15 kids. My son was 11 years old at the time. It was so cold. We built a fire, you know, most of you would be very proud of this fire. We wouldn't necessarily say you're supposed to build them this big. The thing with fires is they're warm if you're standing next to it. 2 feet away from a campfire, it's as cold as ever. We sat through the days, all day, hovered by this campfire. My son and I, and the rest of the kids in his troop. It began to snow that night. We said, we better get to bed. This could be awful. And we went to bed. The next morning, we woke up. Somebody else had already started the fire. We got up. It was 2 feet of snow on the ground. It was snowing heavily. We got over that campfire. My son looks up at me and says, Dad, is this bonding? And I said, no, son, this is survival. When you say we get up and get out of here, and we did. So there's a great value of being a leader in the Boy Scouts. I had so many experiences that I would never have had with my son. And I appreciate all those who are continue to be supporters of the Boy Scouts. Thanks for the time today. Thanks for letting me come and visit with you. And I don't know if there's time for questions.
Yeah, there's
any
time
interest?
for questions. People have any questions?
I get it.
Yes.
So, the connection between Eagle Scouts and maybe C-suite executives, as far as folks that run major corporations, I noticed that a lot of CEOs are former Eagle Scouts. Do you have statistics on that, or?
I don't necessarily have statistics. I would agree with you. When a young man, and I didn't touch on this one, I will. When a young man advances through scouting and he becomes, you know what I didn't do? I'm a rookie, I guess. Let me pass around real quickly the Eagle Scout badge. I usually pass this around early so you can take a look at it and see what's involved. This is what we present a young man when he becomes an Eagle Scout. I should have done that earlier. Those are really hard to earn. They're really hard to check out from my own office. I had to give him my American Express cards. But when you look at what a young man has to do to become an Eagle Scout, it sets that person up because it's so involved. The very climax of an Eagle Scout award is a project that person has to come up with. He has to find a need in the community and figure out how to solve it. So it's not a huge leap to see that so many people leading not just corporate America, but church ministry and education, they're Eagle Scouts because they've advanced. They've figured out what it takes to achieve this level of success. It's not easy. We have thousands of kids that join the Boy Scouts, and about 2 or 3% become Eagle Scouts. You know, and that's okay. I don't have any false illusions that every boy who joins scouting is going to be an Eagle Scout. Pretty good. Was, and our nation would be even greater than it is, in my opinion. But if they have that scouting experience and some of those values, that scout oath and that scout law, if some of that rubs off on them for the rest of their life, I'm happy with that. Yes?
I'd be curious to know, the Eagle Scouts in the room, what your projects were. Do you remember? I bet you do.
No, this was 1960, it was the late 60s. You know, I honestly don't remember what my project was.
Really?
Stopping the Confederate advancement.
You gotta remember it was the 60s.
Rings a bell.
Oh, 1960s.
I remember mine. You can still see it. I built 6x6 posts, hand routed them with the number on them, and placed them on the Burt Gilman Trail. I think I built 60 of those since it's like a 30-mile trail.
Wow.
And I think they're still up. Yeah, so that runners and bikers and people could see where they were.
Charlie.
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed to say, like, well, I actually can't remember my project, but I can remember my 2 sons' projects. The older one
We were sponsored by a church out near Cottage Lake in Woodinville. And he was a basketball player in high school. And so they had what I guess you would call a basketball court there. It was very dilapidated shape. So they basically broke up all the surface that was there, built a retaining wall because the court was actually sloped upward, conforming to the ground level, put in 2 new basketball hoops and standards and plating lines and all that sort of stuff. And the church was unbelievably thankful.
Yeah, wonderful project, wonderful project. Anybody else have a project?
Nancy, my father was the scoutmaster, and there was never at any moment, any time, in any part of any conversation that I was not going to make Eagle. So it was, I mean, it was just one of those things that was going to happen. So it was just, wow, that's what I did.
That's okay, we'll forgive you.
Any other questions? Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody have anything else you want to share? Okay, have a good week, and Lisa, hopefully we'll be back.